works.
Everybody, children and women are benefiting.
The critical metal used in mobile phones and electric batteries has been referred to as white gold for its use in the green energy transition.
In a move no one saw coming, Niger seized its biggest uranium mine from France, shutting the door on over 50 years of foreign control with a single declaration of sovereignty. The West is rattled, France is furious, and the world is asking the same question: why did Niger do it now? And what secret plan is unfolding beneath the Sahel's sands? Let's find out. It wasn't just a policy decision. It wasn't a press release or a legal renegotiation. It was a clean break, an unapologetic severing of a decades-old colonial tether. When Niger's transitional military government announced it was nationalizing the Somair uranium mine, it didn't just reclaim a mine, it declared war on a system. The Somair site, located in Arlit, northern Niger, had long been operated by France's state-linked nuclear company, Uranium. Since 1971, this single operation has quietly powered French homes and weaponry. Paris relied heavily on Niger's uranium to keep its nuclear grid alive, while Niger, ironically, remained one of the most energy-deprived nations in the world. For years, Niger exported light but lived in darkness. France lit up its cities with uranium mined by workers who, back home, often lived without running water or electricity. But in 2025, Niger said enough. The numbers told a story too bitter to ignore. Uranium held a 63% stake in the Somair mine, yet reportedly controlled 86.3% of the uranium output for over 5 decades. In any normal business deal, such an imbalance might raise eyebrows. In post-colonial Africa, it reignited rage. Niger's new leaders labeled the arrangement exploitation and promised to restore full sovereignty over the nation's minerals. They made it public, they made it loud, and they made it irreversible. This wasn't just economic policy, it was a message. It said, "We are no longer your resource warehouse. We will no longer dig while you thrive." International reactions were swift. French media painted the move as reckless. Western analysts framed it as populism. But inside Niger, the story was different. Street vendors cheered. Radio hosts debated what else should be taken back. Social media in neighboring Sahel states lit up with a single question: could we be next? In truth, this was bigger than uranium. The Somair takeover symbolized a pivot away from dependency, away from Western terms, and toward a self-directed future. But that choice came with high risks. Niger had just burned a bridge with one of its longest-standing economic partners. That uranium wasn't just sitting in the ground, it was a pillar of the national economy. At its peak, uranium accounted for at least 70% of Niger's exports and 5% of GDP. To lose the reliability of French-backed operations and still move forward required vision and something new to sell. That's where the next step came in. Because once you nationalize your main resource, you have to do something more radical. Stop depending on it. Niger's leadership didn't just want to own the uranium. They wanted to escape its shadow entirely. No more single commodity reliance. No more being a nuclear colony disguised as a trade partner. So they opened the maps. They looked west, east, and underground. What else could Niger offer the world? The answers were copper, lithium, gold, and much more waiting to be found. That transition, from uranium nationalism to mineral diversification, wasn't just economic survival. It was an ideological evolution. Uranium had been the symbol of control. Diversification would become the blueprint for independence. But it wasn't just about digging different minerals. It was about mining a new identity. Because once you break free from one master, the question becomes, what do you build in its place? And that takes us directly to the next chapter, where Niger didn't just stop at reclaiming uranium, it started unearthing the future. After yanking control of the Somair uranium mine from France, Niger stood at a crossroads. It had reclaimed its most powerful symbol of sovereignty, but symbols don't pay salaries, build roads, or balance national budgets. The uranium battle was won, but it exposed a deeper truth. A single resource economy is a fragile economy. So the military-led government, emboldened by its bold strike, did something few expected. It didn't double down on uranium. It quietly began shifting its focus to the rest of Niger's mineral underworld, long overlooked, underestimated, and underdeveloped. What followed wasn't a rebrand. It was a full-blown mining transformation. At the heart of this shift was a radical question. What if Niger became more than a uranium supplier? What if it became Africa's next mineral powerhouse? Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. That vision took physical shape in the Agadez region, where copper deposits, once thought too remote and insignificant to matter, were suddenly at the center of a government-backed revival. The state-owned Compagnie Minière de l'Air Communautaire SA was granted rights to explore and extract copper, with an ambitious plan: produce 2,700 tons a year for the next decade. In mining terms, that's a modest start. But in the language of geopolitics, it's a statement. Niger was betting on copper, a conductor of electricity, an essential element in the renewable energy transition, and a globally in-demand resource. Copper wasn't just a commodity. It was a signal that Niger could play a bigger role in the world's energy shift. While the West obsesses over cobalt and nickel, copper remains irreplaceable in wiring, motors, and grids. And Niger had it, quietly, buried beneath centuries of sand. But even that wasn't enough. The government had tasted the freedom of strategic minerals, and now it wanted to be at the table of the next great energy boom: lithium. In a small district called Danit, barely on the radar of global investors, the government awarded a permit to a local company, Comerex SA, to extract lithium on a small scale. Just 300 tons per year, over 5 years. On paper, it looked tiny, but in practice, it meant something enormous. Niger was entering the electric battery race. Lithium powers smartphones, laptops, and most importantly, electric vehicles. The world's superpowers, from China to the US, are locked in a high-stakes race to secure it. And now, Niger was joining that race, not as a client, but as a player. What makes Niger's lithium play so intriguing is the timing. As Western nations scrambled to diversify from Chinese lithium dominance, Africa's lesser-known reserves have become the new frontier. Countries like Zimbabwe and the DRC are already making waves. But Niger? No one expected it to join the party. Yet here it is, issuing mining permits, inviting exploration, and making it clear: our minerals will power your future, but on our terms. And while copper and lithium stole the headlines, something even more ancient was quietly gaining traction again: gold. Gold mining in Niger is not new, but until recently, it was largely informal, dominated by artisanal diggers operating in loosely regulated zones, especially in the western regions. Now the government is formalizing those operations, supporting exploration efforts, and encouraging legal extraction. The logic is simple. Formal gold mining means better safety, more revenue, and less environmental chaos. But it also means something symbolic. Gold is global money. Unlike uranium, gold doesn't need to pass through political bottlenecks or specialized buyers. It's a universal asset, and Niger wants in. What makes this diversification campaign so unique isn't just the minerals, it's the method. Unlike the past, where foreign companies led and locals followed, the Nigerian government is putting state-backed national firms at the center, controlling permits, directing exploration, and, most importantly, retaining ownership. This mineral shift is Niger's way of saying, we're no longer the miners, we're the owners. But minerals, no matter how valuable, don't move themselves to ports, don't refine themselves into market-ready products, and don't market themselves to buyers. Niger was mining a new identity, but it needed partners to help bring that vision to life. And not just any partners, not the usual ones with colonial hangovers and IMF strings. But who's coming to Niger's side? And who's being shown the door? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. With uranium reclaimed and new minerals unearthed, Niger was ready to rewrite its economic future. But a hard truth loomed. You can't build a mining empire alone. Machines are needed. Technical expertise is vital. Markets must be accessed. And most importantly, financing must flow. The old strategy of depending on Western corporations had collapsed with the nationalization of the Somair uranium mine. So the question became, if France was out, who was in? Niger didn't hesitate. It reached beyond its former colonizer and extended a hand to an entirely different set of global actors, nations with resources, ambition, and no imperial baggage. This wasn't just a change in contracts. It was a strategic realignment, a conscious pivot from dependency to partnership, from colonial leverage to mutual interest. The first hand Niger shook was Russia's. In 2025, Niger signed a memorandum of understanding with Moscow, focused specifically on geological research, resource mapping, and mining cooperation. This wasn't vague diplomacy. It was a clear invitation to help Niger explore its undermapped terrain using Russian satellite technology, seismic tools, and mining logistics. The Kremlin saw it as an opportunity. Russia, eager to expand its influence in Africa, viewed Niger as a gateway to both mineral wealth and political leverage. For Niger, it was more than just technology, it was trust. Unlike its relationship with France, this new partnership wasn't built on centuries of control. It was transactional, strategic, clean. But Russia wasn't the only unexpected guest at Niger's resource table. Talks quietly emerged with Iran, centered not around copper or gold, but uranium, the very resource France had just lost. While the West gasped at the idea of Niger supplying uranium to a country sanctioned over its nuclear ambitions, Niger simply saw a buyer. A buyer who paid in full, no lectures attached. These negotiations, though controversial, marked a profound shift in how Niger viewed its role in the geopolitical arena. It was no longer just a source, it was a broker of power. And then there was China, the ever-patient giant watching from the wings. Chinese mining and infrastructure firms began slowly increasing their footprint in Niger, particularly around lithium and copper zones. But unlike Western companies, they didn't demand policy reforms, IMF conditions, or security concessions. Instead, they offered what Niger craved: equipment, roads, training, and guaranteed markets. A mine in Agadez wasn't just a mine. It was a starting point for a road, a school, a logistics hub. The deals were clear: minerals for development, not for debt. Critics of Niger's new alignment, mostly in Western capitals, labeled it dangerous. They warned of resource capture, environmental risks, and a lack of transparency. But inside Niger, those arguments felt hollow. After all, the old Western-led model had left the country with barren schools, dusty roads, and an energy crisis, despite having supplied uranium to power Paris for half a century. If that's what transparency brought, many Nigerians were willing to take their chances with alternatives. But these weren't just opportunistic alliances. They were calculated steps in a larger geopolitical rebalance, one where African nations, especially those led by military regimes in the Sahel, were deliberately distancing themselves from former colonizers and reimagining their future alongside emerging power blocs. For Niger, this realignment also brought a sense of political solidarity. Russia, Iran, and China weren't just partners. They were counterweights to the global system that had long kept African nations at the bottom of the supply chain. These new relationships offered something the West had never quite delivered: respect without strings. Still, the shift came with consequences. Foreign aid from the West, particularly from France and the EU, began to dry up. Niger's leaders anticipated this. That's why their new alliances weren't only economic, they were about reshaping the country's political identity. By choosing Moscow over Paris, Beijing over Brussels, and Tehran over Washington, Niger was signaling that it didn't just want new deals, it wanted a new world order. But shifting allegiances is only the beginning. Deals on paper don't always reach the people on the ground. And in a country where over 40% of the population lives in poverty, the next challenge was even more critical. How do you turn all this global bargaining into actual bread, roads, schools, and hope for ordinary Nigerians? Foreign alliances can open doors. Mineral diversification can stabilize markets. But the ultimate test of Niger's bold mining revolution is not in the copper fields of Agadez or the uranium pits of Arlit. It's in the villages where people still cook over wood fires, walk miles for water, and send their children to crumbling schools. For most Nigerians, global memoranda and lithium contracts mean little unless they translate into food on the table, jobs in the community, and real development where it's needed most. And Niger's leadership knows it. That's why, after cementing new mining partnerships, the transitional government unveiled a sweeping initiative: the creation of a National Economic Development Fund. Unlike the opaque royalty deals of the past, where profits vanished into offshore accounts or foreign treasuries, this fund is designed to capture mining revenue and reinvest it directly into Nigerian society. It's more than an economic strategy. It's a political promise. The idea is straightforward. A fixed percentage of all mining profits, whether from copper, lithium, uranium, or gold, must be funneled into this fund, which is then used to finance projects in infrastructure, agriculture, education, and health. Every dollar extracted from the ground is expected to raise something above it: a road, a school, a clinic, or a grain silo. The first waves of this policy are already visible. In the rural outskirts of Maradi, mining-linked revenue has been earmarked for solar-powered irrigation systems, enabling small farmers to grow crops year-round instead of being held hostage by the rains. In Zinder, where youth unemployment has long fueled migration and instability, the government is funding technical training centers, focusing on mining-related skills like surveying, safety, machinery maintenance, and environmental monitoring. These are not cosmetic projects. They are structural investments designed to tether the mineral boom to long-term social uplift. But the most radical feature of the fund lies in its decentralization. Rather than central authorities in Niamey dictating how money should be spent across all regions, the fund incorporates local councils and community leaders in the decision-making process. Mining revenue is not just redistributed, it is relocalized. For the first time, communities living near mines, who for decades endured dust, displacement, and disruption, are now being empowered to direct a share of the profits toward their priorities. Take the example of Chibarakaten, a remote village near artisanal gold zones. In the past, mining brought chaos, illegal operations, environmental degradation, and foreign middlemen. Now, with the new policy, the village has formed a community oversight board that helps monitor mining practices and recommend local investments. The first project? A medical outpost and clean water pumps. Both are already under construction. This local-first model is an attempt to break with the classic boomtown effect, where wealth pools around extraction sites only to disappear when the resource is depleted. It's also a defensive move. Mineral wealth without inclusion breeds resentment, sabotage, and insurgency. Niger's leaders have seen that play out in neighboring Mali and Burkina Faso, where mines became targets during social unrest. They want to flip that narrative. If people see the mine as their lifeline, not their curse, they're more likely to protect it, not destroy it. Yet challenges remain. Corruption is a persistent threat, especially in post-coup political environments. Ensuring transparency in fund management will require watchdogs, civil society, and international scrutiny. There's also the problem of technical capacity. Does Niger have enough trained personnel to manage such a complex reinvestment system? To mitigate this, part of the fund is being directed toward capacity-building programs for local governments, training them in budgeting, procurement, and project evaluation. The goal is to create not just mineral wealth, but institutional strength. The development fund also aims to tackle the darker side of mining, illicit extraction, and environmental damage. With formal profits now tied to local development, communities have more incentive to report illegal activity, while environmental cleanup can finally be prioritized as part of the development budget. For instance, in the gold-rich region of Liptako, pilot programs are now using funding to replace mercury-based mining practices with safer, more sustainable alternatives. This is Niger's gamble, that the same ground once stripped and exported under foreign rule can now finance its rebirth. But for this model to endure, it must deliver consistently, transparently, and equitably. Because while the minerals may be underground, Niger's future will be measured in what rises above it. Bridges, schools, grain silos, and the belief that for once, the wealth of the land truly belongs to the people. Do you think more nations must do the same? Was it impossible? Let us know in the comment section. Do you support Niger's decision? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.